Let's be honest with each other. How many tools in your garage were bought because of brand recognition? Not because you carefully compared them. There's a brand people often say, "Just buy it, it's safe," but very few people continue with the next sentence, "until you use it regularly." Many people only realize there's a problem when they have to buy it a second time. Or worse, it ruins the work that's already in progress. Moments of clarity often don't come from genuine user reviews. It comes from bills, from wasted time, from the feeling "I should have known sooner." And the irony is, the more popular it becomes, the more people make the same mistake. Not everyone learns through experience because experience is too expensive. In this video, I'll point out a brand that makes buyers spend more money than they realize, and the signs to help you avoid becoming the next one. What brand is that? Let's get started. If you had to summarize the biggest mistake of modern tool buyers in one sentence, it would be this: we think we're buying a machine, but we're actually signing up for a long-term commitment. It's not a drill, it's not a saw, but rather the battery system behind it. Let's imagine it this way for easier understanding. You buy a very good car, it runs smoothly, and there are no breakdowns. But 3 years later, you find out the company no longer sells gasoline for that car. The car isn't broken at all, you just can't put fuel in it. That's exactly how many people realize they were wrong. But it's too late. In the hundreds of stories I've read, there's a recurring memory. Someone once owned a very beautiful, very durable machine made in Europe that worked for years without any problems. Then one day, the old battery gradually wore out. And that's it. No new batteries left. There is no solution. There's no way out. What's being thrown away isn't because it's broken, but because it's been abandoned. This is the point that most advertisements deliberately gloss over. They talked about capacity. They talked about the price. They are talking about the new version. But they never talk about the lifespan of the promise. A battery system is, in essence, like a residential area. If no new houses are built and no new people move in, the area will decline very quickly, even though the old houses are still intact. So, the question to ask isn't, "How strong is this?" but rather, 5 years from now, will anyone still be here? In the next part, we'll look at very small, very subtle signs that show an ecosystem is slowly being neglected, and why most buyers only realize this when it's too late. This is the moment we need to clarify something very important, and also what confuses many people the most. The brand mentioned in this video is not a brand that makes bad tools. In reality, if you look at the surface, everything seems perfectly fine. The product works exactly as advertised. Many users have responded positively. There are items used daily for household needs, gardening, cleaning, etc., and they still perform their function well. So the question is, if quality isn't the issue, what's really going on? The answer lies in the bigger picture, which very few consumers look at. Having read this far, have you guessed the name we're referring to yet? Yes, that's Hart. This brand is sold exclusively at a massive retail chain that serves hundreds of millions of shoppers each week. Behind it is a large power tool manufacturing conglomerate, sharing the same family with many other familiar names in the market. Hearing this, everything still seems very safe. But that very structure reveals a cold truth about the modern retail world. In a system where shelf space is a valuable resource, each brand is like a train. If the train doesn't accelerate quickly enough, doesn't add new carriages, doesn't create new destinations, sooner or later, it will be shunted onto a siding. It's not because it's broken, but because there's another train that's more profitable. This is the most dangerous type of collapse because it happens in silence. No announcement, no declaration. It's just that there are fewer new products being released, gradually decreasing presence. And then consumers realized they were standing in a train station, with no next train. A brand might not be bad, but in this context, it can still be a bad choice in the long run. What do you think when you buy a product? Are you buying its current quality, or are you betting on who will still be standing behind it in 5 years? If you find these perspectives helpful, please consider subscribing to the channel, not to support any individual, but so we can collectively dissect seemingly small purchasing decisions that have long-term impacts. In the next part, we'll delve into very subtle signs, signals that you only notice when you're close enough to see a brand gradually being forgotten. If a brand collapses due to quality, you'll see it very quickly. The tool is broken. The customer is complaining. Decline in evaluation. But there's another kind of decline that's much more dangerous because it's silent. No press release, no scandals. It's just a very small, very slow, and very easily overlooked signal sequence. And Hart has all the elements. First sign: few new tools are being released. In the world of battery-powered tools, the pace of new product releases is like a heartbeat. As long as it's damned, the ecosystem will survive. If the rhythm slows down, it means there's a problem. Let's try to remember. When was the last time you saw a completely new tool model from this brand? It's not Gen 2, it's not color changing, it's not adding the word brushless. It's a truly new product that expands the ecosystem. When the product portfolio stagnates, it's not because the engineering team has run out of ideas, and it's usually because someone on a higher floor has stopped betting more money. It's like a neighborhood where no new houses are being built anymore. It looked fine at first, but a few years later, you realize no new families are moving in anymore. Second sign: batteries are getting more expensive, and there are unusual sales. This is a sign that many people misunderstand as an opportunity. Deep discounts. The combos sound too good to be true. These prices make you think, if not now, then when? But in retail, a sale isn't always a gift. Sometimes, it's a polite goodbye. When a battery system enters its final stage, batteries are no longer mass-produced. The cost per pill increased, and in parallel, inventory is pushed out into the market faster and stronger. That's why in the comments section, someone said, "I bought Hart on clearance," or "I've been seeing it a lot lately in outlet stores." The question is, are you buying a bargain? Or are you buying the end of a story? Third sign: the shelves are starting to rebrand. This is the strongest signal, but also the one that the fewest people pay attention to. Consumers often look at products, but smart shoppers look at the shelves. When you walk into a familiar store, and the brand that used to be front and center is now pushed to the corner. When the profile picture on the website is no longer the name you saw last year, when another product line begins to be favored more, with more models and more options, that wasn't a random decision. In large-scale retail, display space is the priority map, and when that map changes, it tells you something very clear. Someone has been chosen to continue the game, and someone hasn't. Smart buyers don't look at the tool. They are looking at the retailer's behavior. Have you ever noticed the shelves that way? Or do you just look at the price and think, as long as it works, that's all that matters? If these kinds of analyses help you see shopping from a different perspective, consider subscribing to the channel. It's not to hear more advice on what to buy, but to know when to stop. In the next part, we'll discuss a very interesting paradox. Why are there brands that are cheaper and simpler than Hart, yet don't scare users as much? And where does the real lesson lie? If you spend time reading comments from longtime DIYers, you'll realize something very strange. They don't think Ryobi is the perfect brand at all. On the contrary, they are very frank about pointing out Ryobi's weaknesses. Old design pins, bulky, not tidy, not eye-catching in a new technology kind of way. In a world where everything is made thinner, lighter, and sleeker, Ryobi looks like an old, unattractive pickup truck, but it still starts every morning. So the question is, why is a brand with so many flaws forgiven? The answer doesn't lie in the specifications, it lies in time. Ryobi is one of the very few brands that has made a promise for which they have had to pay the price. Backward compatibility. Let's imagine this with a familiar image. It's like building a neighborhood and promising that every old key will still open the new houses. This makes innovation slower, more expensive, and sometimes less appealing to outsiders, but for those who have lived there for many years, it's the difference between faith and anxiety. In the comments section, there are some sentences that don't need much analysis. Ryobi survived the storm. I dropped it from the garage roof, and it still works. At least I know Ryobi won't disappear next week. This is not a compliment about strength. This is a compliment about presence. Ryobi didn't win because they were the strongest. They won because they didn't abandon their old users when they moved to the new generation. In an industry where so many brands view legacy buyers as a burden of the past, Ryobi chooses to carry that past forward, even if it means slowing them down compared to faster-moving competitors. And that's the biggest paradox. A battery design that was criticized as outdated ended up being the thing that helped users sleep better at night. You don't need to love Ryobi to understand this, but you need to acknowledge a truth. Trust isn't built through advertising, but by not giving up when things get inconvenient. If you find this type of analysis helpful in seeing the tool industry from a different perspective, consider subscribing to the channel. It's not to glorify any brand, but to understand together why some decisions that aren't glamorous are so important. In the next part, we'll face another, even more uncomfortable paradox. Why don't cheaper, simpler brands make buyers feel betrayed? And what is the real lesson consumers need to learn? If you only look at the surface, Hyper-Tough might seem like a joke in the tool industry. Cheap, simple design, not flashy, not talking about the ecosystem, no long-term promises. Yet, strangely enough, in the comments section of longtime users, Hyper-Tough isn't hated. Sometimes, they are even defended. Why? The answer isn't in performance, but in expectations. In behavioral economics, there's a very simple principle. People aren't disappointed by poor results. They're disappointed by results that are worse than promised. Hyper-Tough almost promises nothing at all. They don't tell you you're stepping into a future platform. They don't sell the dream of buy once, use forever. They just said, very bluntly, this is cheap stuff. This is enough. If it's over, then it's over. Imagine Hyper-Tough is like a one-season raincoat. You don't buy it with the expectation of passing it down to your grandchildren. You bought it because it's raining today, and you need to get home dry. And when that shirt tears after a while, you don't get angry, because it did exactly what it promised. That's the key difference. Meanwhile, brands in the middle, not cheap enough to be used as a default temporary option, but also not committed enough to become a long-term ecosystem, inadvertently create a feeling of betrayal. Hyper-Tough didn't fall into that trap. They don't pretend to be an ecosystem. They don't demand buyer loyalty, and therefore, the buyer doesn't demand anything to the contrary either. Some people in the comments section said it bluntly. I know it's not professional, but for that price, I'm not complaining. It sounds simple, but this is a very valuable lesson in consumer psychology. Audiences can accept cheapness, but they don't accept half-hearted promises. Hyper-Tough exists like a roadside gas station. You stop by, fill up with enough fuel to continue. You don't expect it to become your second home, and precisely because no one considered it home, no one felt abandoned when they left. What do you think? When you buy a cheap item, are you unconsciously expecting more than what it actually promises? If you find these perspectives helpful in understanding why some brands disappoint while others don't, consider subscribing to the channel, not to hear more praise or criticism of the product, but to work together to unpack the traps of expectation that the market has cleverly set. In the next and most important part, we will put all these pieces together to draw the core lesson: how to ensure you are never the last to know in your next shopping trip. When you put all the pieces together, from abandoned battery systems and silently shifting shelves to the strange disparity between forgiven brands and names that leave buyers bitter, you'll realize an uncomfortable truth. Most consumers don't make mistakes due to a lack of information. They bought the wrong thing because they asked the wrong questions. In the moment standing in front of the shelves, we often ask very familiar questions. Is this tool powerful? How long does the battery last? Is it on sale? Those questions are not wrong, but they only speak to the present, not the future. And it is precisely in that gap that the greatest risk lies hidden. Try to imagine buying a tool system like moving to live in a new neighborhood. The first house looks very beautiful. The roads are clean. The price is attractive. But you didn't ask, is this area still building more houses? Have the surrounding shops been around for a long time? Were the people who lived here before me ever abandoned? 4 or 5 years later, when you need to expand, add rooms, add a garage, add amenities, you'll discover that the area is no longer developing. Everything is still there, but no one is investing anymore. That's the moment you realize too late. Therefore, the core lesson is not to avoid a specific brand. The lesson lies in how you view the market. Don't just ask, is this tool powerful? Let's start asking more uncomfortable questions. How long has this battery system been in place? In the last 2 to 3 years, have any truly new tools been added? Does this brand have a history of abandoning old platforms or old users? These questions are not on the price tag, not in the advertisement, and rarely mentioned in quick review videos. But it's they who decide whether the money you spend today is an investment or just a deferred cost for a later repurchase. Someone in the comments said a very short but extremely accurate sentence, "I'm not buying a bad tool. I bought a lost future." That's not anger. That's enlightenment. If this video helped you slow down for a few minutes before you hit the buy button, if it made you look at the shelves with different eyes, then please consider subscribing to the channel, not to follow another person talking about the tool, and to ask together the questions the market doesn't want you to ask. In the final part, we'll conclude this story with a lighter, but very realistic perspective. How can you continue to shop smart without living in fear that what you're using will disappear? If you've watched this far and are thinking, "But I already bought it," please stop for a moment. This video isn't meant to make you feel wrong. It's not to tell you to throw away what's working well. If the tool system you currently have still meets your needs today, still gets the job done, and still helps you repair, build, and maintain your living space, then it still has value. The only important thing is, don't invest further until you truly understand what you're betting on. Use what you have, observe the market, and continue buying with clarity, not momentum. Everyone has their own shopping story. If you've ever been in a situation where you learned about a tool, device, or any product too late, please share in the comments section. Those experiences can help others avoid repeating the same mistakes. If you find this channel offers different perspectives, doesn't rush sales, and doesn't follow trends, consider subscribing, not to hear more advice, but to ask difficult questions together. And one final note, this content is shared for the purposes of analysis, education, and exchanging consumer experiences, and is not intended to attack or direct the purchase or sale of any specific brand. Thank you for staying until the last minute. See you in the discussion below in the comments section.